Welcome back, everyone. This is DA Sports. I'm your host, DASASIN. Thank you. This is episode number 29. Today's episode, we just got a couple of things to get into. We are going to recap my picks from NFL Week 15. And then, of course, we're going to finish the episode with my top 5 and worst 5 NFL rankings. But remember, because every 5 weeks, instead of the top 5 and worst 5, I give you my all 32 picks. So that's right, this week I will be giving you my all 32 teams rankings from 1 through 32. So let's get into it. Okay, so to start, we're going to talk about my picks from NFL Week 15. Obviously, the first group of these picks is my pick 3. Now, my pick 3 this week, I did go 2-1. So, unfortunately, I didn't go undefeated this week, but still more positive than negative. 2-1 this week. This brings my season total to 31-11. So, still definitely a great percentage. Hopefully you guys are following along. Everything is great. 31-11 is a great record, so no complaints there. Now, to get into each game individually, the first game in my pick 3 was the Cincinnati Bengals to beat the Tennessee Titans. The Cincinnati Bengals were favored to win by 5.5 points. They did cover the spread. They were able to win 37-27. This game went about the way that I expected it to. Cincinnati's offense has been probably the most explosive offense the entire season, especially recently. I believe they're 5th right now in scoring, but their biggest issue is their defense. And I said that Tennessee's defense is actually better than most people expect, but Cincinnati's offense is just clicking on all cylinders. Jamar Chase is just on fire. He's running away with the lead in yards for receivers. I'm sure he's really upset that all of this statistical brilliance that he's been able to put up is coming in losses. But at least in this week, they were able to get the win. They're still holding on to a slim chance of making the playoffs. They definitely would have to pretty much win out in order to do so. But it's 1 week at a time, and that's exactly what they did this week against Tennessee. They won by 10 points. They put up 37. Final score was 37-27. And this game was more of the same of what I've said has been ailing Tennessee all season. It's Will Levis. Will Levis threw 3 interceptions in this game. Keep in mind, I believe he only threw like 8 passes. So, that kind of speaks to how his year has been going. Eventually, they finally took him out and then put Mason Rudolph in, and then that was when Tennessee was able to actually be somewhat productive, which is how they ended up getting the 27 points. So, I'm pretty sure we've seen the end of Will Levis for the year. I mean, I felt like we should have seen the end of Will Levis weeks ago, but, it is what it is. They invested a lot in thinking that Will Levis was going to be the guy, so they kept giving him opportunity after opportunity. I know all of the Tennessee Titan fans have to be ecstatic that he's no longer, or at least shouldn't be starting anymore. Now, whether or not that changes, we don't know. I mean, unfortunately for the Titans, it really doesn't matter because their season's over. They're not making the playoffs. They've already been officially eliminated, so it's just a build for next year, get the young guys more time. But Will Levis, not the answer at all. We'll see what they do going forward. I think he still has time left on his contract, so he'll probably still be there next year. But my guess is that they'll draft somebody early in the first round to be their starter next year. Or what they should do, which more teams, I don't know why they don't, is draft somebody and let him sit behind a veteran quarterback for a year so he learns, and then put him in the next year, because the likelihood of you getting a quarterback that's going to come in with this team day one and get them into playoff contention is very slim. So we'll see what they do going forward, but not a good look for Tennessee, but a good win for Cincinnati and the first win out of my pick 3. Now, the second game in my pick three was the Kansas City Chiefs to beat the Cleveland Browns. Now, Kansas City was favored to win by 4.5. They did cover the spread, which they essentially rarely do. Final score was 21-7. So the one positive about it being 21-7, aside from them covering the spread, is that we don't have to hear all the foolery about, their games being rigged, or it came down to the last second and the refs magically helped them, or somebody fell over on purpose to get them a block. All the nonsense clickbait you see online right now. This game was 21-7. The game wasn't close. It was 21-0, and the Chiefs pretty much kind of took their foot off the gas, and then Cleveland was able to get a late score. But this game wasn't close. They dominated from the beginning to the end. It's a great look for Kansas City's defense, because the last 2 weeks, Kansas City's defense hasn't been at the same level that they've been all season. There was an interesting stat that a lot of people were putting out this week showing all the teams that haven't scored at least 30 points in one game during the season. And I believe there's 5 teams total. And the Chiefs were on this list, and all the other teams on this list, I think the most wins a team had was like 4 wins, where the Chiefs have the best record in the league right now. So people were saying it's amazing that they're on that list. And the reason why they're on that list is because, for the most part, the defense has been playing really well. They've only given up 30 points in one game, and that was their one loss to Buffalo. So even though they've played 3 out of the top 5 scoring teams in the season so far, only one team has scored 30. So, yes, they're on that list because they haven't scored 30. A lot of people seem to keep forgetting how many injuries the Chiefs' offense has dealt with. Their receiver that they signed in the offseason to be their number one receiver hasn't played a single game. The number one receiver they had on their team from last season coming into this season only played a few games and is out for the rest of the season. Their starting running back missed a little more than half of the season. He just got back. So you add all of that together, then their offense is not going to be as potent. All the players that they were building with together in the offseason and working things through is now not there. And right now, essentially, D-Hop is essentially their number one, but the only receiver that they have that they've been working with from the preseason that actually is productive is the rookie. And he still's got a lot to work on in terms of his route running concept and stuff like that, but he has gotten better. So as these other players are getting back, Pacheco getting back now, and Hollywood Brown should be back in the next couple of weeks, then I think we'll see more production from their offense and see more success, even though they have the best record in the league, so they're still having success, but in terms of their production offensively. So nonetheless, they did get the win, so that was the second game that I got right as a part of my pick 3. Now, the last game in my pick 3 was the Carolina Panthers to beat the Dallas Cowboys. This was the game that I got wrong, and I got it horribly wrong. I said that based on how Carolina had been playing, they had been playing really well. They had been playing tough teams really close and losing close games at the end. And before playing those really tough teams, they played mediocre teams and they were winning. Ever since Bryce Young had been back as a starter, they had looked really good, playing well above their actual record would suggest. And Dallas has been a lot weaker of a team than the teams that they've been playing before Dallas. And so I said Carolina would not only win and cover the 3-point spread, I said they would win easily. They didn't. Not only did they not win easily, they lost easily. Dallas beat them down from jump. From opening kickoff, they just dominated the game on both sides of the field. And it was a testament to what Dallas was supposed to look like earlier in the season. It was a testament to what Dallas thought could happen with Cooper Rush coming in to start, considering what Cooper Rush had done in previous seasons when he came in for Dak. This is what Cooper Rush looked like in those seasons, and they put it all on display. Now, granted, I will give Dallas the benefit of the doubt. They did have some injuries on their defense earlier in the season, so a lot of those guys are back healthy. But yeah, they played probably one of their best games of the season. They won 30-14, so they were favored to lose by 3 points, won by 16 points. And the 14, the Carolina scored last, so it was really 30-7. So definitely a good win for Dallas. And that was the game that I was wrong about this week. It happens, no big deal. We move on to the next week's pick 3. Now for the next pick in this week's game was my lock of the week. This week's lock of the week was the Baltimore Ravens to beat the New York Giants. And I said this was probably the second most confident I've been in a lock of the week all season. And it essentially played out exactly as I thought it would. The spread was 16. It actually went up to 17 before kickoff. But nonetheless, they covered that spread, both of them. They won. The final score was 35-14. So they won convincingly, 21-point win. And even though the Giants were at home, it didn't matter. It was really a testament to a top 10 team beating a bottom 5 team, and it showed itself all aspects of the game. Just complete domination. Lamar Jackson got back to his MVP type performance. I don't think Lamar Jackson is in the MVP race, even though there's a couple of commentators on TV saying that, oh, he's back in the hunt for MVP. No, he's not. Stop it. Stop it. He's not even top 3 in the MVP race, in my opinion. So let's cut that out. But great win for Baltimore. You know, it was a big win, even though it wasn't against a division opponent, which is what they're clawing and scratching at right now, trying to get back to the top of their division, which I believe the rest of their games are division games. No, actually, no, they have a game against Houston. So, but I think 2 out of the last 3 games are division games. They're a part of that 4-team group that has 3 games in 10 days coming up, which is just brutal. And so we'll see how they get through that. But a good win for them and lock down my lock of the week. So 1-0 this week, 11-3 on the year for my lock of the week. It's actually 10 wins in a row for lock of the week. So this one is pretty much, as the name suggests, a lock. So if you see me put my lock of the week in, you might as well go ahead and throw some money on it. Money line. It's pretty simple. Now, the last game for my picks for Week 15 was my underdog pick of the week. This week's underdog pick of the week was the Pittsburgh Steelers to upset the Philadelphia Eagles on the road. This one, I was wrong. It did not happen. Pittsburgh did lose the game. So 0-1 this week in my underdog pick of the week. Bring me to 4-10 on the season. So, rough record. But again, like I said before, this one is the hardest one because the team has to be favored to lose by more than 3 points, which typically means that they're going to lose the game. And this was no exception. Philadelphia won 27-13. Pittsburgh also didn't have George Pickens again, which is their most explosive offensive player. So it's hard to beat a top-tier team without your best offensive player. And even though I expected for their defense to be able to hold Philadelphia down a little bit, that wasn't the case. Philadelphia was back to clicking on all cylinders. They were able to throw the ball effectively, which they weren't able to do the previous week. A.J. Brown got off. Devontae Smith got off. Jalen Hurts got off. So they kind of quieted some of the noise that was going on through the media this past week with all the rift with the passing game and all that. Both A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts came into their press conferences after the game suggesting, like, hey, this is what you guys wanted to see, right? So, they had the right to talk. They won the game. They won the game convincingly. The passing game was a lot more effective. Unfortunately, in this game for Pittsburgh, it did look like T.J. Watt got hurt. We don't know the extent of the injury. We don't know if he's going to miss time, and if he is going to miss time, how much time he's going to miss. So that'll be a huge blow if he does miss time. We'll probably get some more information about it today and see how it is going forward. So, yeah, definitely wrong about that game. Philadelphia looks dominant. I don't think Pittsburgh can be too down on themselves. It's just a product of playing one of the best teams in the league. Philadelphia dominated time of possession. I believe in the second half, time of possession was like 25-5, which is just absolutely absurd for an entire half. So it's really hard to win a game when you have the ball a fifth of the time than the opposite team. So I was wrong about that one, but no biggie. All in all, it was a decent week, and that was it for my underdog pick of the week. So now to finish off the episode, we are going to get into my top 5 and worst 5 rankings after week number 15. But because every 5 weeks I give you my all 32 rankings, that is what we're going to do today. So I'm going to give you my top 5 and worst 5 with a little more detail about why I put them in that position. But then I'm going to give you 6 through 27. I'm just going to rapid fire each name and what position I put them in and their record. So let's get into it. All right, so starting off at number 1, got to go with the Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles are 12-2. They're coming off a huge win at home against the Pittsburgh Steelers, who were previously just outside of the top 5. They were dominant on offense and defense. They have looked like, I would say they look like the most complete team now. Previously, I've been saying week by week that it was Detroit, but the injuries for Detroit on defense have pretty much mounted up to a point where they can't be complete on defense, and it shows. They've been giving up a lot more points on defense recently, and it makes sense. They're now not even on like second-tier players. They're on third and fourth-tier players at certain spots. It's really hard to win that way. But in terms of Philadelphia, like I said, they have been able to run the ball effectively. I still think that Saquon Barkley is second in the MVP race for that reason. And they showed this week against Pittsburgh, who is a really good defense, that they're capable of being explosive in the pass game also. They have one of the best receiver tandems in the league, and it proved itself true this week. Now coming in at number 2, I got to go with the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs are 13-1. They do have the best record in the league. I know some people are a little surprised for me putting them in second and not third, especially after the big win that Buffalo had this week. And here's the reason why. Yes, I know that Buffalo did beat Kansas City on the field. But the team that Kansas City has on the field right now is not the same team they had on the field against Buffalo. People seem to forget that Pacheco was still injured in that game, so he didn't play. Pacheco just came back. He makes a huge difference in the run game. He's way more explosive than Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt's still been running the ball well, but he's more of like the bruiser who's going to top out at like 4 or 5 yards. Pacheco has that top-end speed that 4-yard gain could turn into 20. And I think that makes a huge difference, especially when playing against top-tier opposition, because sometimes all you have is that little window to get through the hole, and he's going to get through that hole a lot faster than Kareem Hunt is, so that makes a huge difference in the offensive production. Also, another thing that's changed since that game is they've gotten better with figuring out their left tackle position. At this point, they've essentially benched both of their left tackles. They've now moved their left guard to left tackle and then put the replacement at left guard, which is an easier role to replace because you have interior help with the center. So the Chiefs are a lot better team than they were at that time. And I feel like Buffalo has shown that they're not as good as they were at that time, mainly because of their defense. Defense has been giving up a lot of points. So I do believe that the Chiefs strongly deserve to be at number 2. They are the number 1 seed, not only in the AFC, but the number 1 seed in the entire league right now. And they finally got off an impressive win where they were able to dominate a team that is not on their level. So if they're able to keep this going with them getting the line situated, I think that the things look great going forward. There was an injury to Mahomes at the end of the game, so we'll see how that turns out. It was an ankle injury, which he's dealt with before. I think that because of the games they have going forward, I don't expect that Mahomes will sit because their last 3 games of the season probably one of the toughest in the league. They have Houston this week, then they have the Steelers on Christmas Day, and then they finish the season with the Denver Broncos. So all 3 of those teams are really good. So they're definitely going to need Patrick Mahomes to play. I don't think Carson Wentz is going to be able to pull off the win against those three teams. So I expect that he'll still play and he'll gut through it to make sure they get the 1 seed secured. Then I expect that once they have the 1 seed secured, then they'll probably rest him. Even though if they do get the 1 seed secured, he'll already get a rest with the bye. But we'll see how it goes going forward. But again, they deserve to be at the number 2 spot. Coming in at number 3, I got to go with the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills had the most impressive win of the week, beating the Detroit Lions, who were previously the number 1 ranked team in the league. They were able to score. Their offense has been just completely explosive their last 2 weeks, putting up 48 points this week and 42 points the previous week. So just absolutely amazing, 90 points in 2 games. Unfortunately, their defense has also given up 44 points and 42 points respectively in those 2 weeks, which is a part of the reason why I have them at 3 and not higher. Their defense is definitely going to have to get it together come playoff time, because if they're giving up this kind of points against some other top-tier teams, it's going to be really hard to pull off a win. You can't expect your offense to score 40 every week. But all in all, they do look very impressive. That's why I have them at number 3. They are still scratching and clawing to try to get to that 1 seed. They have one of the easiest schedules in their remaining 3 games. They play New England twice and the Jets, so there's a good chance that they'll win out, which means that they would just need for the Chiefs to lose 2 of their last 3 games, which with the competition is possible. But that's what it'll take for Buffalo to get that number 1 seed, and that's what they're trying for right now. As I mentioned earlier, I think Josh Allen has essentially run away with the MVP race. Technically, I would say Saquon is still potentially in range, but it would take Josh Allen to have 2 horrible games against these terrible opponents that they play, and it would take for Saquon to break the rushing record. I don't see both of those things happening, so I think that it's essentially the MVP race is over with, and it has Josh Allen's name on it. Now coming in at number 4, I got to go with the Detroit Lions. Detroit Lions are 12-2. So Detroit has been in the number 1 spot for a good chunk of the season. I've said week after week that they look like the most complete team. And this has been with the fact that they've had so many injuries on defense. It's now starting to pile up to the point where they can't overcome it. And then on top of that, this week, they also had another injury on the offensive side. David Montgomery injured his knee, and the early accounts say that they think that he might be done for the season, which is just terrible. They probably have had the most injuries out of any team so far this year. It's really saddening because this is a team that had a lot of expectations. This was a team that I picked to go to the Super Bowl this year. I think they still have a chance to still make it to the Super Bowl, but they really got to get it together. They're going to have to really overcome a lot of deficiencies with the injuries they have on defense. They gave up 48 points at home this week to Buffalo. Yes, it was to Buffalo, who's a really good team, but nonetheless, you can't give up that kind of production to anyone if you expect to be a Super Bowl champion. So we'll see how it looks going forward. Right now, I don't believe they should drop any further than this, and they deserve to be in the 4 spot. Now coming in at number 5, I got to go with the Minnesota Vikings. The Minnesota Vikings are 12-2. I've been saying this every single week that the Vikings have been slept on. Nobody's really talking about them. They don't realize, with them being in the same division as the Packers and the Lions, that they have a really good record. Even though they've already played some of those teams, they've only had 2 losses. And this was another week where they had a dominant win against a division opponent. Their offense and their defense clicking on all cylinders. I think for their sake, they probably love that they're not being talked about that much. But as long as they keep winning, they keep winning. They do have another game against Detroit coming up. And I think they have another game against Green Bay again also. So they're able to win out. That's the thing that people don't even realize. If Minnesota wins out, they have a good shot at being the number 1 seed in the conference. So the team that nobody's talking about could eventually go into the playoffs as the number 1 seed. We'll see how it all plays out. Like I said, they have a lot of tough games coming up. They could also lose those games, but nonetheless, I think as of today, they definitely deserve to be number 5 in the top 5 rankings. Now going into the rest, at number 6, I have the Green Bay Packers at 10-4. At 7, I have the Los Angeles Rams, who are 8-6. At 8, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are 10-4. At 9, I have the Baltimore Ravens, who are 9-5. At 10, I have the Houston Texans, who are 9-5. At 11, I have the Denver Broncos, who are 9-5. At 12, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are 8-6. At 13, I have the Washington Commanders, who are 9-5. At 14, I have the Los Angeles Chargers, who are 8-6. At 15, I have the Seattle Seahawks, who are 8-6. At 16, I have the Arizona Cardinals, who are 7-7. At 17, I have the Atlanta Falcons, who are 7-7. At 18, I have the Cincinnati Bengals, who are 6-8. At 19, I have the Miami Dolphins, who are 6-8. At 20, I have the San Francisco 49ers, who are 6-8. At 21, I have the Dallas Cowboys, who are 6-8. At 22, I have the Indianapolis Colts, who are 6-8. At 23, I have the Carolina Panthers at 3-11. At 24, the New York Jets at 4-10. At 25, the New Orleans Saints at 5-9. At 26, the New England Patriots at 3-11. And at 27, the Chicago Bears at 4-10. Now for the worst 5, at 28, I have the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland Browns right now are 3-11. As I mentioned earlier, they had a horrific loss against the Kansas City Chiefs. Their offense was not able to really get anything going. The Chiefs put a high priority into shutting down Nick Chubb in the running game, and that's definitely what they did. The Chiefs have done a great job of shutting down all of the top running backs in the league that they faced this year, so this was no exception. Cleveland, their season is done. Jameis Winston continues to throw picks. Now, he did say a couple of weeks ago he wanted the Lord to deliver him from throwing pick sixes, and since then he hasn't thrown any pick sixes. Even though he threw 2 against Denver, he hasn't thrown any in the last 2 weeks, but he specified pick sixes. He probably should have specified picks because he's been throwing picks in the last 2 games, just hasn't thrown any pick sixes. So Cleveland definitely on a downward spiral right now. They only put up 7 points, and that 7 points was essentially in garbage time. Technically, they still had enough time to come back if they were going to be productive, but it came at a time when Kansas City wasn't playing as aggressive as they were playing earlier in the game. And once Cleveland scored, then Chiefs started playing a little more aggressive on defense, which is why they didn't score afterwards. Now, at the end of the game, they did take Jameis out of the game and put DTR in the game to finish. I don't know if they want to do that for the rest of the season, just to kind of get him a look. I don't think that DTR would be more effective than Jameis in terms of if they're trying to get wins. But if they're trying to just get looks and see what they're going to have going into next season, then yeah, it might make sense to play DTR. It also might make sense to play DTR if you want to just commit to trying to get as good of a draft spot as you possibly can. So Cleveland definitely deserves to be at the 28th spot for this week. Now coming in at 29, we got to go with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now the Jacksonville Jaguars are currently 3-11. They have been playing a little bit better in recent weeks. They've been playing close games. This week they lost to the New York Jets 32-25. The previous week they did get a win against Tennessee, which is why they went up 1 spot in the bottom 5 rankings. But all in all, nothing too impressive about Jacksonville in terms of for the season as a whole. There's a reason why they only have 3 wins. There's really nothing for them to look forward to. It's also one of those things, though, where unlike some of these other teams in the bottom 5 that need a quarterback, Jacksonville is not in the quarterback market. Even though before he got injured, Trevor Lawrence didn't look that impressive. I had said earlier in the season I felt like he's regressed some, which is not a good sign. I do think they're going to end up changing coaches at the end of the year. But in terms of quarterbacks, I still think, especially because they just signed him to one of the largest contracts in the league, Trevor Lawrence will be back next season. So the good thing about that is if they end up with one of these top 3 picks or something, then they'll probably have the first pick at the first non-quarterback, which right now I would say is probably going to be the Heisman winner, Travis Hunter. So how much that helps them going forward, we don't know. But that's essentially what I would say Jacksonville Jaguar fans have to look for going forward and nothing else. Now at 30, I got to go with the Tennessee Titans. Tennessee is also 3-11. I talked about them a lot earlier in this episode because Will Levis is terrible. They are one of the teams that are in the quarterback market. I would assume Mason Rudolph will finish out as a starter the rest of the season. I've been saying all season that their defense is better than people expect, but they did give up 37 points this week, so that's a bit rough. Part of that, though, is when your quarterback turns the ball over as much as they have. In total, Tennessee threw 4 interceptions this week, so it's like if you give the other team chance after chance after chance, it's going to be hard to stop them. So I don't completely blame Tennessee's defense on that. They've got to be demoralized week by week with how much they find themselves back on the field after getting stops. So nothing really to look forward to for them. They deserve to be in the number 30 spot. Coming in at 31, we got to go with the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders are 2-12, tied for the worst record in the league. They are like the weirdest team. I keep saying this week by week. I think that Antonio Pierce deserves to keep his job because this team seems to scratch and claw and fight every game. They found a way to make this game somewhat close. They played the Falcons last night. They were getting dominated most of the game, but they scored late, bringing the total within 6 points. They had a drive at the end of the game to try to get themselves in the scoring position. They had a chance for 2 Hail Marys, which weren't really like super long Hail Marys. I think they were like on the 35-yard line. If they would have got one of those and kicked the extra point, they would have won the game, which essentially is what the Raiders have been doing, and they just weren't able to get it done. As I've said all season, they just don't have enough talent overall to compete against other teams. Even though Atlanta's not a top-tier team, they're still a lot better than the Raiders, and the Raiders are definitely one of those teams in the quarterback market. But for now, they haven't been able to put anything together. I don't expect them to put anything together for the rest of the season, and I believe they'll probably remain in this spot, which is a good thing for them because it gives them a higher pick, so they remain at 31. And then bringing in the rear at 32, of course, is still the New York Giants. Giants are 2-12. They're the other team that's tied for the worst record in the league. They, unlike the Raiders, are not playing in games that are close. They are getting blown out week after week, and it makes sense because they suck. Okay, there's nothing else really to talk about. They played the Ravens. They got blown out as expected. They had the largest spread of any game all season, which was 17 before kickoff, and they couldn't even cover that. I don't think this will change much for the rest of the season. And for them, that's a good thing because they need a lot of help. Even if they get the number 1 pick, I don't necessarily know if they'll use it. I mean, I can see the argument why they would, especially if they get a chance, if they're really set on one of their quarterbacks. But if they're not, I would say trade back because you need multiple picks to really help this team. But we'll see how that goes. But nonetheless, they deserve to be at number 32. So that's where they are. So that's it for this week's episode. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Please make sure you like and subscribe and share wherever possible. And I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Peace.